Okay, welcome everyone. So this is our very first Meet the Most Influential TESOL Quarterly Author Series 1. Our first guest is the Kazuya Saito from University College London. So Dr. Kazuya Saito is an associate professor in applied linguistics at University College in London, UK. His research interests include how second language learners develop various dimensions of their speech in natural language settings and how instruction can help optimize such learning process in classroom contexts. And Kazuya is also the convener of Tools for Second Language Speech, where a range of online research and teaching materials are freely available. And you could check that website in our TESOL webpage. He currently also serves as associate editor of studies in second language acquisitions. So today, Dr. Saito will talk about his one of the most cited downloaded TQ articles, what matters for the assessment, teaching, and acquisition of comprehensible second language pronunciation. So Dr. Saito will summarize his paper about 10 minutes, and then he will address a couple of questions we sent before, and also he's happy to field some questions from your audience as well. Okay, welcome to Dr. Kazuya Saito.
Yeah, Sam, thank you so much for your introduction, and it's a great honor for me to be part of this lecture series. And I have a lot of passion towards this topic. The title of my presentation is exactly what I have been interested in as a researcher, and also as a second language learner, a speaker, a user of English. So what matters for the assessment and teaching and acquisition of comprehensible, not necessarily perfect native like second language pronunciation. So I'm very happy to talk about this paper, and I'm very happy to willing to answer the questions coming from the some students. Okay, so let's move forward. So very first of all, I would like to give you a very quick snapshot of the field of second language pronunciation. And as we already know, especially the English, most of the communication is taking place between the second language users rather than the first language users. And also, it's very extremely difficult to find adult second language learners with a perfect, pronunciation proficiency, but probably more importantly, many successful functional second language users are comprehensible, intelligible, not necessarily perfect, again, in their pronunciations. Therefore, there is a consensus among researchers that what matters for second language speech training is an assessment is not that being perfect, rather being comprehensible and intelligible. This is the starting points for this line of research. And now I'd like to introduce you to the methodology. So how do researchers actually talk about comprehensible pronunciation, like native-like pronunciation? How do they measure that? It's very handy and intuitive, actually. So let me explain to you. So first of all, researchers collect this so-called spontaneous speech from a bunch of second language speakers with various backgrounds and proficiency levels. They use sometimes picture description task, or they do the individual interview. And they get a lot of speech samples and play them in a randomized order to first or second language listeners. So as soon as they hear the sample, the listeners are asked to make a very quick, this is very important, very quick intuitive judgments, because that's exactly how communication happens in real life context, right? And there are two rubrics they typically use. One is the comprehensibility. So when you hear the sample, how comprehensible is it? 1 to 9. 1 is very difficult to understand. 9 is easy to understand. And the second rubric is the native likeness. How native-like is it? It's heavily accented, not native-like at all. 1, all the way to 9. It's perfect, native-like. And the very first study came out in 1995. So Murray Monroe and Tracy Darwin came up with this methodology. Among many key findings, the main message was that the comprehensibility and native likeness are two different constructs, although they are obviously overlapping with each other, but there's essentially two different constructs. So since then, because of the theoretical value and obviously practical value, the research, these findings have been replicated, extended all over the world. But very importantly, the findings are also mixed. Therefore, the main objective of my paper was to actually summarize the finding of a bunch of the existing studies, and particularly with a focus on English as a second language. And then I used a special statistical procedure called meta-analysis. We can talk more about it later. But basically, instead of just like me providing a narrative review, which could be subject to the influence of my sort of bias, I used a statistical tool to make sure that I summarize the findings without any bias. So in essence, the three main findings. So first one is that, okay, so to what degree do raters actually agree with each other? So as I said, it's different from IELTS or TOEFL, like speaking test. Basically, raters just make a very quick intuitive judgment. Do they actually agree with each other? For the same speech sample, some people say, oh, that's good, but others may say, oh, that's not good. Does that happen often? But then findings was crystal clear. Actually, we don't provide a training to raters. We ask them to make a very quick judgments of comprehensibility, native likeness, but they agree with each other with a very good, great, strong agreements. And this is the same regardless of their backgrounds. Like sometimes researchers just recruited the expert, like linguists as raters, or some other times they use even second language listeners. But either way, they always agree on with each other. So that was a first finding. The second finding is that so which pronunciation features do listeners use while they're making judgments of how comprehensible is it or how native-like is it? So what do we mean by pronunciation features? So here I have three categories. One is the segmentals, so individual sounds, vowels, and consonants. The other one, the second one is the prosody, so English, word stress, sentence stress, intonation. And the fluency, so how quickly you speak without too many pauses. So there are three categories. So do they pay attention to different areas of pronunciation while making judgments of comprehensibility and accentedness? And very interestingly, they actually use a different types of information while making comprehensibility native-like judgments. If you're making a judgment of comprehensibility, you pay attention to all of them. So segmentals, prosody, and fluency. But if you're asked to make a, well, how native-like is it, then intuitively, subconsciously, you prioritize segmental accuracy rather than prosody or fluency. The third, final important finding is this. So what type of instruction? So the researchers actually, in order to improve comprehensibility or native likeness, researchers have been trying different types of instruction. So focusing on segmentals, or focusing on prosody, or focusing on fluency. So what type of instruction facilitates the development of comprehensibility and native likeness? So basically, does instruction result in different types of outcomes depending on whether you're trying to improve comprehensibility or native likeness? The answer is yes. So all training definitely works for you to improve comprehensibility. But when it comes to, you want to improve your native-like pronunciation, actually, it's so resistant to change. So according to meta-analysis, I didn't find a significant effect of instruction on native likeness, but definitely instruction makes a lot of difference for comprehensibility. Therefore, I'd like to summarize this is actually takeaway message for everyone. So three messages. One, so comprehensibility and native likeness are distinguishable. And this is something that the teachers and students in particular should know. And it's totally fine. Some students are just crazy about improving native likeness of their pronunciation. That's fine. We don't need to discourage, but they should know comprehensibility and native likeness. They're two different things, and comprehensibility is what matters at the end of the day. And comprehensibility can be achieved if learners meet the minimum requirement by practicing the multiple dimensions of L2 pronunciation. So basically, you don't have to be perfect, but you need to work on accuracy and fluency, so segmental prosodic accuracy and fluency, so various dimensions of pronunciation proficiency. As long as you meet the minimum threshold for each, you can be comprehensible. But foreign accents or native likeness, that's a tricky thing because it's really resistance, unlikely to change even after instruction. And this is one reason being that your judgment of native likeness is actually tied to the segmental accuracy, which is extremely difficult to change. Okay, so Sam, I just want to end this presentation to talk a little bit about the open science platform that our team has developed, because this topic, comprehensibility, is really crucial for the teachers. And then basically, there are certain things that researchers can do to help. This website is Tools for Second Language Speech Research and Teaching, and our team has created. So let me just quickly introduce you to this. If you go to Google, you just type SLA Speech Tools, and you can find it right there. So this is where you can find a lot of tools to improve comprehensibility for your students. So this is not only for researchers, but also for teachers. And then for teachers, we have uploaded a range of research-based materials, again, for the purpose of enhanced comprehensibility. So you can provide explicit pronunciation teaching, segmentals, as well as for the prosody. And then nowadays, it's very important, it's a key topic, is to how to help students improve their pronunciation, especially through communicative tasks. So you may have heard about this term, the TBLT, task-based language teaching. It's coming to pronunciation. And if you're researchers, I know the audience, all young lions, young researchers. So we have prepared, actually uploaded a lot of materials that researchers can use. You can check individual differences among second language speech users, and you can check their aptitude and so on. So if you want to actually work on comprehensibility out of speech research, this is a website right there. And also for everyone to know, this is now officially registered as an open science platform as well. So if you can contribute your materials to us, you can also get the open science badge when it comes to your publication. And we like to actually sort of like promote this awareness of research, especially among teachers. And finally, our team also has 2 YouTube channels. I know this video will be uploaded onto the TESOL YouTube channel, but we're trying to sort of like, again, raise the awareness of research-based teaching among the TESOL cohorts. Thank you so much. And that's it. And if you are actually really interested in furthering your interest in this topic, you can reach out to me.
Okay, so thank you so much, Kazuya.
Welcome. Yes.
Yeah, it was very interesting and innovative study, which you tell us about the what characterized comprehensive accentedness in both assessment setting and then the classroom setting. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I shared a couple of questions before. So I'm sharing the first questions that I got from one of the readers. So I think the first question about, so who are the mixed listeners in your study?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, actually, Sand, thank you so much. Sand already shared with me all these questions. So I just make sure of answering their questions right. I took some notes. I took some notes. I think the question is this, I guess.
Right,
so who are the mixed listeners? Yeah. Actually, so basically, I was really interested if the raters, if their backgrounds are different, their reactions to the like accented speech may be very different. And the 3 groups: super experts, so like linguistically trained people, and also mixed group, and then the second language listeners. This mixed group, basically, researchers just didn't define who they were, or I got the feeling that most of them are novice, so just people on the street, so people who did not have any linguistic training. But researchers did not clarify that, clarify who they were. Yeah. And then as you saw from this meta-analysis, listener backgrounds do make some difference in their comprehensibility ratings, and or actually especially accentedness and native likeness judgments. So yeah, the one advice for future researchers is that it's definitely important to be consistent about who listeners are. Because if you have a mix, that means like you have maybe linguists, maybe teachers, maybe people on the street. So that will confound your findings a little bit. So yeah, thanks for the clarification. That's one key message for the future researchers.
Right. So I think it's really critical to know that the listener's background,
that's
understand
true. Right.
comprehensibility, accentedness.
Yeah, because they yeah, and as you can guess, yeah, their reactions are slightly different.
Yeah, I think I did my similar study for the paper that I published in language testing, and then among our participants, the correlation between comprehensibility and accentedness is really high. But for people who are familiar with the specific accent, the correlation is pretty low. So I mean, if you're familiar with that, for example, like I'm from Korea, so when I listen to Korean accent in English, 100% comprehensible, but I can tell that it is pretty accented, right? So that how the comprehensibility can be different from the accentedness issue. And then one thing that I found was interesting. I mean, that was a question one that I got from one of the readers, that accuracy, the segmental accuracy is the most significant predictor of L2 accentedness. But that segment issue is a little bit like resistant to improvement in even with the explicit instructions was provided. So the question was like, do you think that segmental features are actually more challenging to teach or learn than super segmental features in English?
Yeah.
So that was the question one.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So this question, I took some notes. So it's really interesting that let's talk about the studies outside of the classrooms. So there are a lot of studies which have shown that the prosody, so raw stress, intonation, or fluency, these areas of pronunciation proficiency can easily show improvements as long as you practice, as long as, let's say, you spend time in a second language speaking environment. But it's at the very same time, when we look at the segmental accuracy, those people who have actually achieved high level segmental accuracy, it's just not created with how much they have practiced or how much they have been using. Rather, it's more about their aptitude. So people who actually have aptitude likely have a very good segmental proficiency. And so the question is, why is it that the segmental is very difficult to change? And also it's fluency, prosody, they're kind of like susceptible to the influence of training. This is because the segmental is a very tricky thing, because in order to be intelligible, versus in order to be like a native-like, these are two different things, especially segmental. So for example, R and L, the English R and L, this is the most difficult thing for Japanese speakers of English like me. But English R and L can be distinguished by many strategies, actually. So if you ever taken the phonetics, linguistics, we know that certain like acoustic features, it's called F3, format, third formats. It's just basically how you use the lips and pharynx and stuff like that. That's the most important thing, to be native-like. But actually, you can differentiate R and L just by length. R longer, L is shorter, or you use the tongue for frontness and backness. Then you can also differentiate. So you can be intelligible R and L, but you're just using a non-native, not like a native-like strategies. But you can be already functional. So it's just up to you how much you want to be native-like. So what I really want to say is like segmentals, it's not necessary to be native-like. You can be already functional and intelligible, such as R and L. Then people may just stop and may just get sealed. And then it's probably the aptitude that may push them to even go farther, even with awareness, so that they can be highly native like. But it's just very interesting. It's only segmental that is very resistant to change, and it's subject to the aptitude. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your thoughtful response to the questions. And then we're going to move on to the question 3. So as your study has shown, the expert and mixed, with probably novice included, differ in how they evaluate the comprehensibility and accentedness. And most of like oral exams, like a TOEFL, IBT, IELTS, and then their oral responses are evaluated by the trained raters. But in the real world, people are not trained according to certain kind of predetermined rubrics, right? So the question was that with such discrepancies suggest that the comprehensibility of speaking response should be rated by novice listeners, the target audience, in the candidate's working environment, for like, for example, like a business English test. So that was the question.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, this is exactly where, San, you and I can kind of like work on and then continue to discuss, because this is your field, testing versus the comprehensive accent is probably more like about my field. And I just found this difference. I don't know, San, if you agree with me or not, but I actually would like to hear your opinions as well. But I just thought that this, first of all, this question is really interesting, because this clearly captures the difference in terms of interest between testing researchers and pronunciation researchers. Because testing, high stakes proficiency tests, so usually professional raters are trained. So you like intentionally train people, and let's say they listen to sample A, everybody is supposed to agree on, let's say, okay, this is the, according to like proficiency CFR or whatever proficiency band, this is that. Everybody should agree on that. And in order to agree, people should be trained, like raters should be trained. So that's how the high stakes proficiency testing settings. This is very interesting, also very important, how to make sure listeners agree with each other, versus the comprehensibility research is kind of mess, because real life communication is mess. So basically we don't train them. And as the question is great, because in a sense that, yes, comprehensibility is just not about speakers anymore. Comprehensibility is also about listeners. And we don't train listeners. We love the variation. So listener A may say, harsh things, and listener B say, lenient things. Highly welcome. Both of them matter for comprehensibility judgments. And so, yes, so the listener variation is kind of viewed in a very different way between the pronunciation, the field of pronunciation, the field of testing. What do you think, Sam? Is that how it is in testing? I'm always curious about it, like how the testing researchers, think of the listener variation.
Right. So in the testing, the reliability is, especially like interreliability, is the most important, because the reliability, like consistency of scores, is kind of a prerequisite for any other assessment qualities. But these days, like we live in the world English era.
Right.
And English is used as a lingua franca, and obviously there are much more accented English speakers than the speakers from the inner circle countries. So people now think that, we should also train listeners as well, not the speakers, right? We have to increase the ability to adapt to the different variety of Englishes. So now we have some kind of a movement towards that kind of acknowledging the listener.
I see.
As an important factor in the assessment context.
Yeah, I totally echo you. Like it's a very interesting. Actually, comprehensibility, this like L pronunciation research is kind of following the exact same path. Like people used to just talk only about speakers and not really listeners. But nowadays, and it's even becoming more dramatic. Like us, if we see listeners reacting in completely different ways, we're just so happy.
Right.
We want to know why. And so this is interesting stuff. But yeah, how we view listeners and even testing, I see that's quite exciting that awareness is especially
right.
high.
Okay. So now let's move on to the next question. So next question was about, I mean, we could talk a little bit more later, but the next
Sure.
question was, so this study, obviously this study was published in TESOL quarterly, so it should be on English. But then question was, would you expect like, similar findings for other languages like French, German, Korean, Japanese, Chinese?
Thank you. Yeah, this is quite a highly publishable topic right now as of 2022 for obvious reasons. Yeah, there's the learning foreign language is just not just about the English and Spanish, French, German, and Japanese. There are some exploratory studies, and then they kind of showing that the patterns are similar, but in my view, these studies really should be replicated, or actually should be extended with a much more rigorous design. And then, yeah, so this is a very good topic for the future research and especially the publishable topic, I think. Yeah, and I'm just listing these studies, but definitely we need a more thorough studies.
Right. Yeah, recently the Dan Isabel from the University of Hawaii published, what characterized comprehensibility in L2 Korean. I think that his findings quite similar to what you found. So segmental is really the matters for determining the comprehensibility.
Oh, that's interesting. I really should check that out. Yeah, he's definitely very active on this topic. And
Okay, and then next question was, so in study 2, which is about pronunciation instructions, it's kind of explicit, it involved both listening and speaking. So if using studies investigating the effects of implicit instruction, not just explicit instructions with delay post-test, do you think that impact of segmental process training would be different?
Yeah, when I actually saw this question coming from Sun, I just couldn't stop smiling because this is definitely not from teachers. Of course, it's coming from the SLA fan, of course. So I was like, yeah, this is a question I wanted to really discuss, maybe hours and hours. but this is simply because I read all these papers for the purpose of meta-analysis, and then I couldn't find anything like this. So this is definitely I mean, first of all, implicit training in the context of second language pronunciation that I have never seen, and I may have seen, but they're not really that many. So it's a very good topic, and this is something that the audience you may have already known, but I'm just kind of saying. But grammar, when it comes to grammar, even vocabulary, it seems that if you engage in implicit incidental training, you show some gains, but maybe the test should be done a little bit later than the immediate post-test. So this could generalize to second language speech. Who knows? And this is definitely up in the air. We have yet to know the answer. And this is something that some of you may know, and this is something I'm really interested in these days. But that pronunciation is different from the grammar. We just cannot teach the rules and stuff like that. Because sometimes it's about your ear. How much difference you can still hear. For example, R and L for Japanese people like me, it's very difficult to even hear the difference. So actually, there's some suggestion that. Especially some extremely difficult segmentals, rather than teaching explicitly, which could be quite confusing, it's probably better to give an incidental implicit training for a really extensive period of time, but make sure they're not really highly aware of what they're doing, rather they just learn things incidentally, then they actually result in more gains. There's some discussion like that. So again, it is a really great publishable research topic for researchers. And then explicit, implicit, which one is better? And then the like a most obvious plus boring answer for researchers is like everything matters. We should teach explicit and implicitly both. But then, okay, let me make it a little bit more interesting then. That probably that's true, but this ratio, the relative weights could be, related to individual differences. Now researchers love to talk about, the learners' individual differences, their aptitude or motivation or emotion. Then what type of instruction is this, like a recipe or could be a difference, and then all of them, the 3 points haven't been really researched in the pronunciation. So if you are to work on any of them, it's a really good topic.
Yeah, I think that these questions definitely merit for research and could be a good topic for dissertation. Who knows? Right?
Well, definitely. I mean, it's definitely worth it.
Right.
Yeah. First of all, you'll definitely stand out because this hasn't been really done. So yeah.
Right. Okay, the final question. So, well, I'm gonna just confess to you. This was a question from me. So, so
this one now.
So in this article, you talked about like the general findings of inter-rater agreement of listeners' comprehensive excellentness. This study aggregated the reliability coefficients, both interclass correlation, Cronbach's alpha. So I was wondering, like, is there any difference in every reliability between the relative and absolute inter-rater reliabilities?
Sure, thank you so much. And then the audience, please try to even understand what this question is.
It was my bad.
No. Yeah, okay, this time for this question, I just couldn't stop laughing. Again, this question is something that I expected to hear from reviewers, but none of these reviewers even asked me, challenge me with this. So now finally I'm being tested. This is a very good question because I cannot answer. If this had come out during the peer review process, I would have been in a big trouble. Okay. So first of all, I don't know, audience, how much you're familiar with this term, reliability generalization meta-analysis. This is proposed by Luke Ponsky, guru of meta-analysis, and he's very creative. He comes up with a lot of the good, sometimes exploratory ideas that we should really test on, and this is one of them. So yeah, basically, if you're really interested, you can read his paper, SLR, Second Language Research 2016. But basically, a bunch of studies, they use a different indices like interclass correlations and Cohen's kappa, Place kappa, Cronbach alpha. Of course, Sun, you're expert on this, so you like all these measures. And then basically what Luke did, Luke suggested was to average everything. And that's what I did. And then that's how I cited his analysis for this particular paper. And Luke and I, actually, we also published another meta-analysis paper focusing on this pronunciation teaching, and we did exactly similar analysis as well. And then again, no reviewers pointed out, so we didn't need to explain that's anything. But now I'm again being tested. But I have to acknowledge this is such a rough measure, and it's probably Sun, you couldn't believe it. But yes, this is what we did, and but I guess this is a rough estimates of like how much they raters agree with each other. And then of course, interclass correlations versus, for example, Cronbach alpha, totally different things. You cannot just combine them together. But probably what the Luke wanted to say is just to take a first step, like just to raise awareness. Yeah. So coming back to the question, so I'm not really ready to answer again. I'm very relieved to know that this didn't come out during my review process. But yeah. So maybe probably maybe Sun, your field, language testing. You guys may have come up with like a more, I don't know, consistent measure to check inter-rater reliability across different studies, because I'm pretty sure, like for example, TOEFL, like people must be interested in like how much the raters agree with each other across different like settings and papers.
Right. Yeah, I read that the article you just introduced to us by Plonsky and Derek
Yeah, Plonsky, Derek,
2016
yeah.
paper. And then one interesting finding from their article was that when people assess the comprehensibility, the Chromba alpha, which is indicate that consistency of like measures was higher than inter-rater reliability. So it looks like that raters consistently score the different speech samples about the comprehensibility kind of consistent manner, but then they're rarely, I mean, they agree with each other pretty high, but is the internal consistency higher than inter-rater reliability when they measure comprehensibility. I found that was interesting.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. Yeah, by the way, this is something that I cannot talk about, but like I found that most of the primary studies actually use the Chromback alpha. So therefore, like obviously the so-called consistency in the reliability was quite high, and yeah, so according to the Larson Hall 2000, I cited here Larson Hall. Basically, the Chromback alpha can talk about both like agreement and the consistency, and that's the reason why a lot of researchers in this line of work, the Tracy Darwin, Murray Monroe, they always use a Chromback alpha for the to check how much the raters agree with each other and how consistent they are. Yeah, but I have to acknowledge, yeah, this is the farthest I can go. And
no, I mean, the Plonsky, Derek mentioned that very few studies in the field of L2 research even reported the Chromba alpha as a measure of reliability too. So, right.
Yeah, but I guess like this is really crucial. Yeah, yeah. So we definitely need to talk about it. And nowadays, if you want to publish anything, then of course, thanks to this paper, now awareness is so high. So reviewers will definitely ask, yeah, what's your agreement? And yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, these days to get your paper published, your quantitative paper published, you should have your effect size reported, and the reliabilities reported. So
I mean, the hugely thanks to this first author, Luke Plonsky. Yes.
Okay, now I will just make this open to everybody. So I will open the floor to questions. So if you have any questions, you could unmute yourself and ask questions to Dr. Saito.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for staying, and hopefully this is interesting to you guys.
Okay, so so in the chat box, some of you raise the questions here. So Cesar, question. So okay. Yeah.
I see. So yeah, Cesar.
Okay.
Yeah, he's asking, from a practical perspective, it is sometimes challenging to make the distinction between listeners' native and non-native status in multicultural, lingua multicultural context where people are exposed to a great deal of linguistic diversity. Do you think moving ahead, we will see more studies that instead of running a separate analysis by one or two listeners, will lump them together in one listener group? Yeah, that's a good one, because that's exactly what we need. As San said, yeah, now it's English is definitely the global super global language. So yes, we always deal with a bunch of people with a different multi-cultural lingual backgrounds. Actually, I don't know how many of you guys have come to visit London, but this city is really messed up. That people have like so many different linguistic backgrounds, and you never even meet native speakers of English. And this is my office, and I have like 30 colleagues along the way. None of them, or I don't know who are actually native speakers of pure native monolingual speakers of English. So actually, Cesar, if you're interested, there are actually a lot of studies coming out on this topic. Oh yeah, let's ask, a bunch of people, with a really different backgrounds, like, like multilinguals, and not only bilinguals, multilinguals, and so many different kinds of backgrounds, and see how they react differently to the, like even same speech sample, like just 10, 20 same speech samples, but they show so different reactions. It's very interesting. Or to me, what's more interesting is like we assume certain things must have some impact, but then it didn't turn out to be, that crucial. So something like that is currently discussed, and then this is definitely happening. And so just to kind of follow up on the London, my PhD students are, just for fun, we recruited 200 listeners, like random second language users of English all over London, which was very easy to do because, as I said, most of them are second language users of English in London. And then we asked them to listen to Japanese accented English, and then we found a lot of interesting stuff. So we published in SLA 2019, but only if you're interested. Also, again, this is a very good research topic. Mm-hmm.
And then Sujiki-san asked two questions, actually.
Oh,
yeah. So is it necessary to measure accentedness along with the comprehensibility, even though we want to encourage students to have a comprehensible speech? Mm-hmm. And then second question, do you think these measurements are useful for students to self-assess their speech as a way to measure their progress?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it's something that you can see from a reviewer. So why do you actually bother checking the two things, comprehensibility and accentedness? And just as a researcher, it's actually important to measure native likeness or so-called accentedness, simply because in order to actually talk about comprehensibility, we need to make sure that's different from what we always call good native-like pronunciation. So it's in order to talk about comprehensibility, just a point of comparison, researchers likely use the native likeness judgments. And then the second question is do you think these measurements are useful for students to self-assess? Yes, Pavel Trofimovich, my colleague, and he has a really good team of PhD students, and his team has published a lot of stuff on the self-assessment of second language speech. Very interesting. And then of course, like teachers cannot provide a detailed feedback to every student every day about their speaking proficiency. So it's really important for students to know how to self-assess their own comprehensibility. That's the topic he has been pursuing with his students. I highly recommend his work, and yes, and his team has also come up with a lot of pedagogical advice how to do that in our classrooms. So yes, I think that is a very crucial stuff that teachers should be aware of.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Or
Oh,
that was
very nice. She said,
okay.
Thank you. That's nice to see. Yeah.
I mean, we also talk about, like, in our lab meeting, said that there seems to be some kind of a relationship between learners' L1 background and their attitude towards their own accents. So
I see. Well, that's a good one too. Yeah. How is it actually?
So, for example, we have a lot of students from China, Japan, and Korea. and they're not really proud of their accents, and they're all asking teachers to how to reduce their accents. But we don't have such requests from students from France and Italy and Germany, where they're proud of their accents. They think that they're very attractive and sexy. So
they're very proud of it. I see.
yeah,
That's good.
I find it
see.
interesting. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. It's the attitude is the probably I don't know, like in Asian countries, Japan, Korea, China, that we are always exposed to the like textbook English, and we don't really hang out, even watch TV or like, I mean, we don't really use the English, rather just to study English through textbooks, and maybe that's why. But I'm very curious though, like how the attitude actually matters for the comprehensibility judgments of other foreign accented speech, because some second language users may have a positive attitude towards the foreign accents, or maybe they may have a very negative attitude towards the foreign accents. How do they actually matter for their comprehensibility judgments? Because our research has never found the attitude to be the affecting factor, which is quite interesting to me. But of course, this could be statistical fluke. So how you feel about your own accents?
Right. Okay, so any other questions for Dr. Saito? Okay, then I'll probably like ask just like one or two questions, which is not related to your TQ paper. So this is probably a question for other graduate students and other researchers as well. So I noticed that you stay really productive. You publish many papers in top-tier journals. So people are wondering, how do you, keep productive in research? Is there any tips and strategies you could share with us?
At the end of the day, I like the way we're ending this whole thing. How to publish. Actually, Sam, you too, like we all productive, and probably I'm pretty sure you agree with me. We just love our topics, and then it's actually 6 p.m. almost 6 p.m. London, and like basically I'm really confused about whether I'm working or I'm just talking about hobbies. So probably that it's a matter of how much you like what you do, and I can see this in common among many of my colleagues, and those who are always publishing or always presenting things. They actually just can't stop talking about research. I don't know if that's healthy or not, but let's not talk about these things now. But
so you have to love what you're doing. You have to infatuated your research topic.
Right. So of course, when you're graduate students, of course, you're still learning. But I'm pretty sure that one day, certain moment, you'll actually meet the topic of your life, and then So I'm pretty sure, Sam, it happened to you, and it happened to me, and so that's I would definitely say that's really crucial.
Okay, thank you, and I'm gonna stop